Wencheng, the head of the He family, a rice and grain tycoon in the capital, lost both parents from a young age and was able to grow up with the great kindness of his aunt. His aunt and nephew were more affectionate than their mother and son. Wencheng had a dream at night, where he saw his aunt sitting in the hall, talking about missing him. Wencheng had already agreed on a meeting date with Southern Grain, which made it difficult for him to break the promise. Therefore, he asked his scholar son, Ziying, who was known as the Northern City Jade Noodle Little Talent, to visit his aunt on his behalf at the eastern village of the city. He himself was delayed by 2 days before leaving. Ziying was ordered by his father to visit his aunt. While stopping on the way to rest, he unexpectedly encountered several thugs who wanted to steal and do evil on the estate but couldn't successfully enter the gate. Ziying went to Zhuangzi and met his kind and amiable aunt, as well as his cousin, as well as Yunkai, a granddaughter whom his aunt had recently recognized. I also saw 2 men and 2 women who disappeared from the beginners in the daytime. The distant mountains of Zhuangzi are verdant, the nearby waters are murmuring, and fresh fruits are fragrant, however, after nightfall, on this estate. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On summer nights, waves of insect chirping came intermittently, and the night was already quiet outside. The sky is filled with bright stars, and the brightest one is the curved crescent moon hanging on the edge of the sky. A small crescent moon shines brightly on the white flowers on this ground. In a spacious and tidy courtyard, lights were lit up in the east and west wing rooms as well as in the backyard, and a faint voice of conversation could be heard from the room. Under the eaves of the main room in the small courtyard, there is a bamboo lounge chair. Next to the lounge chair, there is a bamboo table. On top of the table, there is a plate of braised pork and a plate of peanuts, as well as a small wine pot and a small wine cup. At this moment, an old man with white hair and white beard was sitting leisurely on the lounge chair, pouring and drinking. The old man held a cattail fan in one hand, fanning the wind with it. He also used it to drive away mosquitoes for his grandson beside him. In the other hand, he picked up a small wine cup on the table and took a sip of wine. He also took a peanuts and occasionally squeezed a piece of braised meat into his grandson's mouth. The little grandson sat on a small stool, leaning against the arm of his grandfather's lounge chair. He opened his mouth and ate a piece of braised meat that his grandfather had fed him. He reached out his little hand and shook his grandfather's arm, saying, "Grandpa, Grandpa, tell me another story." Grandpa picked up the wine jug and filled it with wine. "Who wants to hear a story?" "What story do you want to hear?" Tiger Head thought for a moment. I want to hear scary." Not too scary," Tiger Head said, and his little body involuntarily leaned closer to Grandpa. He. Are you the only coward who wants to hear something scary? Grandpa hasn't even started talking yet, your hands have already hurt Grandpa's arm. The old man smiled and looked at his grandson, who really wants to listen. Well, I need to listen. Grandpa, if the story is quite scary, Grandpa will hold on to me and tell it. Tiger Head and Grandpa discussed. Hey, tell me about you. If you want to hear something scary, you're too timid. If you're too timid, you still need your grandpa to hold you and talk. If you want Grandpa to talk, why don't you talk? The old man said, taking a sip from his small wine glass. Putting down the wine cup, I casually took a piece of braised meat and chewed it in my mouth. Grandpa talk, talk. The Tiger Head, only 6 or 7 years old, shook Grandpa's arm and rubbed it coquettishly. My dear grandson has requirements, so the old man naturally can't help but be satisfied. He picked up a small wine cup and drank it all in one gulp, then threw a peanut into his mouth and picked up another one to stuff into his grandson's mouth. Okay, then Grandpa will tell you a story about how he listened to his grandfather's grandfather when he was a child. Grandpa, is the story scary? Tiger Head was curious and wanted to hear the story, but he was a bit timid. Saying it's scary. It's not scary, The old man thought for a moment. Then let me tell you a story about ringing bells in the middle of the night. I heard it's a true story. Ring a bell at night. Tiger's head tilted its small head, blinking its eyes. That's right. The old man nodded. What kind of ringing is that? Tiger Head asked. That's the string of bells hanging around the donkey's neck, the old man said, shaking the fan and giving his grandson a few blows. That string of bells is hanging around the neck of the little donkey. When the little donkey starts running, the string of bells will naturally ring. Tiger Head thought to himself, thinking that when the little donkey left the house, the string of bells around his neck was ringing loudly. Yes, but the story Grandpa wants to tell you is that the little donkey picked a string of bells and rested at night, and the string of bells rang again. The old man picked up a piece of braised meat, tore it in half, fed it to his grandson, and put the other half into his own mouth. What's going on? Grandpa, hurry up, Grandpa. Tiger's Head chewed on the meat and urged Grandpa to speak vaguely. Okay. Then Grandpa will tell you. The old man changed to a comfortable position and leaned back. Grandpa, in that story. Tiger Head wanted to ask something more, but Grandpa gently patted his head with a fan. All right, don't ask all sorts of questions. You've already figured it out, will you still listen to the story? Okay, I'll listen to Grandpa tell a story, Tiger Head said as he stood up from the small stool and climbed onto Grandpa's lap to sit. The old man knew that his grandson was a bit timid, but he didn't say it out loud. He smiled and fanned his grandson. At this moment, 2 young boys of 12 or 13 years old came from the backyard. Before they could get close, they heard that Grandpa was about to start telling stories again. The 2 boys ran a few steps and brought 2 small benches from the corridor. The 2 boys sat down next to Grandpa and listened to the story together. After dinner, catching a cold under the moon and listening to my grandfather tell stories is the favorite thing for the children at home. The old man smiled and looked at the young grandchildren in front of him. He used a fan to drive away mosquitoes for them and started talking. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Speaking of the elderly in the capital, early in the morning, the sun had just risen from the east, and before it could fully illuminate the world, many early risers had already begun to busy their daily lives. Although it was still early in the morning, a sound could be heard from a large house with a garden in the northern city of central Beijing. A middle-aged man's voice came from the main hall of the second courtyard. Inger, don't read for the next few days. Hurry up and have some breakfast later. After breakfast, go out the door for your father and visit your aunt at the village outside the city. Stay with her for a few days. I know, Dad. But Dad, you didn't even mention it last night. Why did you let your son visit my aunt early this morning? Is it possible that some news came through at night? Ziying asked in confusion. That's not true. Wencheng shook his head. A few days ago, didn't your aunt's family go on a long journey? We haven't been to Zhuangzi since. Last night, my father had a dream that your aunt went back to Zhuangzi. She said she missed her father, missed you, and wanted to see both of us. But Dad happened to have a business meeting with a grain merchant in the south today. He couldn't leave for a while, so you should go and see your aunt on his behalf first. Tell your aunt that when Dad is busy these 2 days, he will go out of the city to visit her elderly home. Oh, it's like this. After knowing my father, my son will go out of the city to see his aunt in a while, Ziying immediately replied. Wencheng nodded in satisfaction. This mansion belongs to a wealthy family in the capital city. The He family. The ancestors of the He family were engaged in grain business, and in the hands of this generation, Wencheng has even expanded the grain business. There are He family sources of goods in the southeast, northwest, and 4 directions, and there are He family grain shops in the southeast, northwest, and 4 cities in central Beijing, all of which have more than one. The He family nowadays is not something that can be described by the word substantial, and it is not an exaggeration to say that they are a wealthy family in the capital. However, although Wencheng is shrewd in business, his character is not bad, he has virtue, quality, and integrity, and he is also well known in the business world. However, despite the fact that Wencheng is now a wealthy and prosperous family, he has indeed experienced 3 disasters and 8 difficulties when he was young. If it weren't for his only aunt, Wencheng would not have survived to adulthood. Wencheng's mother left early, when he was only 6 or 7 years old. Fortunately, at that time, there were also grandparents and Aunt Xian at home who loved him. My biological mother had been away for less than 2 years, and his father Shiming remarried a woman named Dan, who was a 23-year-old girl. At that time, Wencheng's aunt had just gotten married, and she was also married to a wealthy merchant with the surname Yuan. Yuan Shoucheng, the uncle of Wencheng, has been away from business all year round and is unwilling to be separated from his newlywed wife for too long. Therefore, he took his aunt with him and left Beijing for the south. Stepmother Shan passed through the door, and for the first 1 or 2 years, she could still pretend to be virtuous. She also behaved well towards Wencheng in front of her. But since she gave birth to a son herself, her attitude towards Wencheng has been deteriorating day by day. Since having a younger son, Wencheng's father has always been biased towards the mother and son. At that time, Wencheng's father was also a businessman and often not at home, so everything in the family was in the hands of the Shan family. A cousin of the Dan family, under the guise of helping to take care of the He family, simply moved into the He family. Wencheng became a yellow cabbage in the field. Although the He family comes from a wealthy family, their wealth is reflected in the gold, silver, and silk fabrics worn by the 2 mothers and sons of the Dan family, as well as in the good wine and dishes that their cousins exchange every night. However, Wencheng is over 8 years old and still wears the clothes his mother made for him when he was 6 years old. Not long after Shiming, the father of Wencheng, went out, his grandfather and grandmother fell ill at the same time. The uncle of the Dan family was a mediocre doctor. After visiting the house, he pretended to prescribe a few cheap medicines, but the condition worsened. The 2 of them lay unconscious for 7 or 8 days, and then left on the same day. Shan Shi was buried in a coffin on the same day, citing the hot weather near Tufu, and was buried in the ground early the next morning. From then on, only Wencheng was left with a child who was even more lonely and helpless. He ate spoiled food every day, was beaten and scolded, and even stopped going to school by the Shan family, claiming to be filial to his grandparents. It wasn't until Wencheng was starving to the point of skin and bones, and there was only 1 breath left, that his father Shiming and aunt rushed back together. It turned out that my aunt had a dream at night when her parents and 2 elders cried and complained. Shan Shi was not virtuous, and she was spending time with her cousin day and night. Shan Shi's uncle used medicine to kill the 2 elders, and Shan Shi and her adulterer seized the property of the He family and mistreated their only child. Wen's life is not long to come. Chapter 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wencheng's aunt and uncle rushed home with Wencheng's father Shiming. When they saw that the 2 elders in the family were indeed gone, and Wencheng was on the brink of death, they were instantly shocked and questioned the Shan family. Shan Shi first panicked and then denied harming others. Instead, he said that Wencheng, who was young, did not study well, studied poorly, and was so lively that he killed the 2 elders. And the reason why I didn't give Wencheng food was also to teach him a lesson, to prevent him from going out and fooling around, and to make him learn well. At first, Wencheng's father really believed the nonsense of the Dan family, and when he brought a stick, he would kill Wencheng, who was already speechless at the time. In the end, Aunt desperately stopped him and took Wencheng to the hospital for treatment, which saved Wencheng's life. Wencheng told his aunt and uncle about his experiences with his grandparents at home. Although Wencheng's father's name is Shiming, he is completely unknown. He does not believe that the Shan family would be so vicious, and even said that Wencheng was lying. Fortunately, Uncle He Wencheng's cousin was working as the chief clerk in the yamen, and upon hearing this, he also felt suspicious. There is a saying that goes, there are people in the yamen who are easy to handle. Since I felt the situation was suspicious, I decided to let He Wencheng's aunt and uncle take charge and directly reported the murder case to the government. The government did not openly raise people for questioning, but conducted secret visits and investigations. The witnesses of the neighbors are all ready made, and even if cousins hang out for a long time, they can't hide it from others. Besides, that so-called little son, with just that appearance, looks more and more like the cousin of the Dan family, even saving blood to recognize relatives. Just a glance is enough. Finally, He Wencheng's aunt gritted her teeth and reluctantly agreed to open the coffin for examination. Sure enough, the bones of the two elders were all gray-black, and it was confirmed by the funeral that they died from poisoning. At this point, He Shiming, the father of He Wencheng, fully understood the concrete evidence in front of him. The investigation was over, and the government captured the Dan family, their cousin, and their father. The Grassland Doctor. Together in the lobby. After 3 trials and 2 inquiries, they all recruited them. After encountering and flirting with the Shan family several times, He Wencheng's father married the Shan family and made a continuation. Therefore, he wore a big green hat for himself, raised a seed for the adulterer and prostitute by Tongbai, and even killed his 2 elderly parents. It was even more because he was blinded by lard, favored the promiscuous woman and the wild seed, and placed his own son, the true only seedling of the He family, He Wencheng, by the side of the tiger and wolf, narrowly endangering his son's life and cutting off the He family's incense. After a task was put before his eyes, He Wencheng's father found it difficult to face the death of his parents, the decline of his family, the dying son, and even more difficult to bear the green hat on his head. He committed suicide by hanging himself from a beam on the night of the verdict. At a young and sickly age, He Wencheng faced his own father's suicide by hanging himself once again when his mother passed away early, his mistress passed away, and he almost died from abuse. This time, he truly became an orphan whose parents had both died. Thanks to his aunt, who also cared for him, he raised He Wencheng as both a father and a mother, allowing him to study and do business. He also worked hard to preserve the foundation of the He family's family business. When He Wencheng turned 18, he handed over the entire He family to him. Aunt He Shixian is both a relative and a benefactor to He Wencheng, and can be said to be a presence beyond her biological parents. For many years, He Wencheng has treated his aunt as his own mother and shown filial piety, while his aunt and nephew are as close as a mother and son. Nowadays, He Wencheng is engaged in grain business in the capital, and the He family is extremely wealthy. The wife married by He Wencheng is also the daughter of a merchant family. Her maiden name is Jade, and there are 2 silver houses in the family. The couple only gave birth to 1 son, He Ziying, and their love was like a precious treasure. He Ziying is also a promising child, with a handsome appearance, good education, and a good character. At the age of 15, he became a scholar and was a famous young talent in the North City area, earning the nickname North City Jade Face Little Talent. He Ziying is not yet 18 years old, although she is not young, her fame is not small. If we talk about the young talents and scholars of the He family, I'm afraid there are not many people in this northern city who don't know him. Chapter 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At present, many families with daughters have already set their sights on He Ziying, the precious son of the He family, and a few families have even hinted at wanting to get married. However, the couple He Wencheng didn't want to arrange a marriage for their son so early. Firstly, the child is still too young and needs to focus on reading. What if my son's personality is uncertain and he doesn't like what he has decided on now in the future? This life is so long, how can my son endure and live it? Although the He family has a wealthy family, their family tradition is upright. The family motto clearly states that one can only take concubines if there are no children at 40, and no one is allowed to take concubines if there are children. So both husband and wife are afraid that if their son marries someone they don't like, their life will not be comfortable, and their parents will also be uncomfortable. So, the families who usually come to inquire were politely declined by the wife of the He family, only saying that the child was still young, still studying, and the marriage was not urgent. When things can't be explained for a while, several families have no choice but to give up. Some also want to find opportunities to allow their daughters to have more contact with the young talents of the He family. If the two of them see things right and have feelings again, wouldn't it be a matter of reconciliation? What families with daughters think, they don't care. They only know that their son must first study hard and strive for progress. Will it be difficult to marry a good wife when my son has a bright future in the future? Now my uncle Yuan Shoucheng and cousin Yuan Jingxing are going out to do business, and there are only my aunt He Shixian and cousin Luo with 2 children, as well as several old servants living in the big village in the east of the city. Unexpectedly, I had a dream at night, and my aunt sat in the main hall of the estate, looking at him kindly as usual. She said it had been several days since we last saw each other, and that she missed the father and son. If she had time, she would go to the estate to see her and stay with her for a few days. After Wencheng woke up, the dream still appeared unusually real before his eyes. Could it be that my aunt's family has returned to the village? Wencheng was thinking about it in his heart and wanted to immediately set off to visit his aunt at Chuangzi. Merchants must keep their promises. He had already arranged a meeting date with a grain merchant in the south several days ago, but a last-minute date affected the merchant's integrity. So, Wencheng asked his son to accompany his aunt first, and he himself arrived 2 days later. Look at you as a father, who doesn't sleep and dream. It seems like even dreaming is a serious matter. Jin Shi finished nagging the father and then nagged his son, you really take your father's dream seriously. He went to the outskirts of the city specifically for a dream. Wencheng's wife, Jin Shi, pretended to be angry and said, Mom, since my dad dreamed of my aunt, it's because he misses her. Since my dad can't leave, it's appropriate for my son to go instead of him. Besides, my aunt has always loved me, and I miss her too, Ziying explained for his father and himself in a gentle voice. Okay, both of you father and son have reason. Mom didn't stop you from going to see your aunt. Go ahead, I'm not feeling well these days. Otherwise, I'll come with you to visit her elderly family. Inger, when I saw your aunt later, I said that my mother asked her how the elderly were. Oh, tell your aunt that if you're feeling bored living outside the city, it's better to go back to the city. After all, there are many acquaintances and relatives around the city. Although Zhuangzi has flowers in spring and fruits in autumn, it's like a paradise in the world. Even if my mother stays there for a few days, she feels comfortable. I really like it very much. But then again, a lonely big estate is far outside the city, and behind it is a large orchard, with mountains in the distance. Your aunt and uncle are also away all year round, and there are only your aunt and daughter-in-law in the house. In addition, your 2 cousins are still young, so you bring a few old maids and the gatekeeper, old Chiu and his wife, in that estate. Such an open place, it's okay during the day, but at night. Oh my! No matter how you think about it, it's not reassuring. As Jean spoke, he felt a bit uneasy. I know my mother, and when I see my aunt, I'll talk to her, Ziying quickly agreed upon hearing her say. Kim nodded. Oh, Grandma Lu, hurry up and have breakfast. The young master will use it later and have to rush out of the city, Jean ordered. Ah, I understand, madam. The woman named Lu Mama quickly blessed herself and turned her head out of the room. Before long, Mammy Lu came in with 2 little servant girls carrying a tray. A plate of bean paste buns, a plate of meat buns, 3 bowls of millet porridge and several dishes. After the bowls and chopsticks were arranged one by one, Wencheng and his family of 3 sat down and started eating breakfast. Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the couple had breakfast with their son, the servant Lai Wang, who had just been sent out by Wencheng to buy a letter, came back with a few paper bags and bamboo baskets. Lai Wang placed the things on the empty table to the side and looked at Wencheng, saying, "Sir, I've bought all the things. Take a look and see if there's anything else missing. If there's anything else missing, I'll hurry up and go again." Wencheng went to the table, looked at the sealed dim sum of Ziying's eye, and looked at the name of dim sum written on the cover. He looked through the package by package, nodded, and confirmed that these were all things that his aunt liked to eat. After looking at several other objects, he nodded and said, "All right, that's all. Please instruct the donkey cart to be prepared outside. The young master is going out of the city, and instruct Xiao Shunzi to drive the cart, and you will follow." "Yes, the little one will go out and prepare the donkey cart," Lai Wang replied, and the person also ran out. "This one is quick, bold, quick to do things, and has some martial arts skills. Ziying always lets him follow whenever he goes out. Moreover, Lai Wang can recognize characters. He is both Ziying's servant and Ziying's book boy." The two grew up together from a young age, and Lai Wang was only a few days older than Ziying. The two of them lived together like brothers. Ziying is a typical young handsome scholar. With Lai Wang accompanying him when he goes out, Wencheng and his wife can rest assured. Without much effort, he heard a series of thumping footsteps. Wencheng turned his head and looked outside, and it was indeed the fast-legged Lai Wang who ran back. Lai Wang lifted the door curtain and ran in. "Go back to the master, madam, and young master. The donkey cart is ready, and Xiao Shunzi is already waiting at the door." Wencheng nodded and said, "Take all these things to the donkey cart." "Yes," Lai Wang responded, picking up something. Madam looked at it and saw that Lai Wang couldn't finish it all by himself, so she called over Lu Mama and said, "Lu Mama, help Lai Wang get some, and we'll send them all out." "Yes, madam." Wencheng and his wife were escorting Ziying out together. Ziying's mother kept reminding him, "Inger, be careful on the way. There's nothing urgent. Don't rush Xiao Shunzi, tell him to drive the donkey cart slowly and steadily." "Got it, mother." Ziying listened patiently and responded. Wencheng raised his hand and handed over a purse. "There's some silver inside, take it." "Thank you, Dad." Ziying took the wallet over. Wencheng smiled and said, "Dad, you're the only son. Why do you say thank you for giving you silver flowers?" After hearing this, Ziying lowered her head and smiled, "Thank you too. The kindness of her parents in raising her is beyond measure. Her child still needs to be raised by her parents. When her son becomes successful in the future, she will take good care of her parents." "Okay, with your words, parents will be satisfied." The couple escorted their son out of the door. Xiao Shunzi was standing next to the donkey cart, holding a small whip and waiting. Lai Wangzi poked his head and looked inside the door. When he saw the three masters coming out, he quickly stepped forward and picked up a small bundle containing Ziying's clothes, then turned around and put it into the donkey cart. "Dad, Mom, that son got in the car and left. Okay, be careful on the way. Don't be too hasty when Xiao Shunzi drives the car," Madam said, feeling uneasy. "Don't worry, Madam," Xiao Shunzi nodded in response. "Lai Wang, take good care of the young master." "Madam, Master, you can rest assured that Lai Wang will take good care of the young master." All the instructions were given, and Wencheng and his wife watched as their son got on the donkey cart. Wencheng whispered again, "Inger, when you see your aunt, tell her that your father will come and visit her in the next few days. Stay with her for a few days, and then we will come back together." "Got it. Dad and Mom, you two can go in. My son is leaving now." "Okay, be careful on the way." When my son goes out, it seems that the 4 words, "be careful on the way," are never just said once or twice. Xiao Shunzi urged the little donkey, and the donkey cart started to move. The string of bells hanging around the little donkey's neck rang incessantly all the way. Chapter 6. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As the donkey cart drifted away, the rustling ringtones went from clear to blurry, until they could no longer be heard. The couple looked in the direction of their son's journey and then walked into the door together. Wencheng changed his clothes and went to meet the southern merchant he had previously arranged. Ziying's mother remained at home as usual, taking care of everything at home. Ziying rode on a donkey cart, bumping all the way towards the east gate. There were several books in the donkey cart, but the cart was jolted too hard. Ziying had not yet flipped through 2 pages when he felt a bit dizzy. He quickly put down the book, rubbed his forehead vigorously with both hands, and suppressed the dizziness. Ziying dared not read in the bumpy donkey cart anymore, so he lifted the curtain of the car window next to him and looked out. The prosperity on the streets of Beijing is truly unmatched by other small towns and cities. The street is straight and spacious, with shops lining both sides. People who do buying and selling, as well as small vendors carrying baskets and wandering the streets, are all busy making a living. Ziying looked at it, put down the curtains, and leaned back against the car wall, closing her eyes to rest. Ziying also thought to himself that the fruits in his aunt's orchard should have already ripened. It's autumn, and the fruits in the orchard are all ripe one after another. At this moment, you can just pick the fruits from the trees and eat fresh ones. Ziying thought, with a faint smile on her lips. Although Ziying has already become a scholar, she is not very old. When she doesn't need to study, it is very comfortable to wander around her aunt's garden, pick fruits, or climb up the back mountain to enjoy the distant view. Ziying really likes his aunt's Shuangzi. As my mother said, it's a bit like a paradise there. Especially in spring, large peach trees bloom, and up close, they appear to be one tree after another. However, if you climb up the back mountain and look back into the orchard, it becomes a pink and hazy world, as beautiful as a fairyland. And the courtyard in the middle of this orchard is exactly where my grandparents live. They really seem to live in a fairyland. Peach blossoms have bloomed, they are pale pink patches, the pear blossoms have bloomed, and they are once again snow-white. The snow-white pear blossoms complement the green leaves, making people feel that the world has become clean. In the current orchard, peaches should be ripening early, while apples and pears should be harvested at the right time. Ziying closed her eyes and thought, even feeling the sweetness of apples and pears. Sitting outside the donkey cart, Lai Wang and Xiao Shunzi didn't think about what their young master often said about poetry and painting. They only thought that this time they went out of the city with the young master to live on the old lady's estate. These days, they can eat fresh fruits freely, eat enough, and enjoy themselves. Lai Wang and Xia Shunzi sat on the front axle, humming a tune, thinking about the taste of peaches, apples, pears, apricots, and crabapple. Although crabapple is a small fruit that can be sour and astringent when picked, Grandma Chiu there knows how to cook it with rock sugar. The taste of cooking. Oh my! A bit sour, a bit sweet, and a bit astringent. That crabapple water is also delicious, hot and cold. Pinching the thin handle of the begonia fruit with your hand, you put it in your mouth, then pull it out again, and the core comes out. The flesh is sour, sweet, and soft. Come and suck it off for a while. Oh my! He can arrive today, and tomorrow he will beg Aunt Chiu to cook crabapple for him, eat crabapple fruits, and drink crabapple water. The more Lai Wang thinks about it, the more beautiful it becomes, and Xiao Shunzi thinks the same way. Accompanying the young master out of the city to go to the old lady's place is the job they are most willing to do. The old lady is kind and pitiful, never making things difficult for them who are servants. They also like old aunties. Every time I go, I help my old aunt sweep the yard, pick fruits, and do everything possible. Grandma can also tell stories. At that time, since the young master was very young, the old lady would tell stories to the young master in a soft and gentle voice. They, who are servants and bookworms, just follow the young master to listen to stories. The old lady never drives them away, treating them all like the same children. If you want to listen to stories, just move a small stool and sit there listening. For a while, I didn't see my old aunt, let alone the three masters. Just these servants. I miss my old aunt very much. Chapter 7. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The strings of bells around the donkey's neck were ringing joyfully, just like their joyful mood. Watching as we arrived at the city gate ahead. In these peaceful years, only some officers and soldiers symbolically stood guard at the city gate, neither searching nor questioning, allowing the people to freely enter and leave the city. However, whether it is donkey carts, carriages, or pedestrians, when entering and exiting the city gates, they must follow order and slow down their speed. No matter how spacious the city gate cave is, it is also a city gate cave. If a carriage or donkey cart drives too fast, it will not be good to run into pedestrians next to it. Xiao Shunzi controlled the speed of the donkey cart to make the donkey run slower. When they followed the convoy out of the city and left the east gate, onto the official road outside the city, the little donkey ran happily again. The donkey cart walked a few miles out of the ground, and the little donkey ran a bit rough. Little Shunzi couldn't bear to urge the little donkey to run faster anymore, letting it slow down. There is a tea house on the roadside not far ahead, where an elderly couple surnamed Ma has been selling water for years. They sell large bowls of children's tea all year round, and add mung bean soup and sour plum soup in the summer. Nowadays, in this season, there are only large bowls of tea and sour plum soup left. When it comes to Grandma Ma's cooking of sour plum soup, it's a masterpiece. Pack after pack of medicinal herbs, grab a few of them and a handful of them. When you've soaked enough, start cooking. Cook 3 pots and mix them all together with rock sugar. Although a bowl of sour plum soup costs 5 won, which is much more expensive than a large bowl of tea with 2 won and a large sea bowl, those who are slightly wealthy are willing to drink that sour plum soup. The taste is really good. Lai Wang looked at the tea shed from a distance and turned to ask the young master, it's almost Ma Popo's tea shed ahead. Is the young master thirsty? Is it bumpy? Do you want to go down and sit for a while and drink a bowl of sour plum soup? Ziying listened and smiled, did you want to drink it yourself? Lai Wang chuckled and said, Lai Wang wants to drink, doesn't the young master want to drink? Ziying also smiled and said, then stop ahead and let the donkey rest for a while. Okay, Lai Wang and Xia Shunzi both grinned happily. The young master has always treated them well. When the car stops, the young master will pay them enough to drink. Grandma Ma listened to the ringing of donkeys in the distance, and then leaned out of the tea house to look over here. When Lai Wang saw it, he waved his hand and greeted from a long distance, Grandma Ma, Lai Wang is here. Grandma Ma looked at her wrinkled face and her smile deepened. It's you, this monkey. Are you going to see your old aunt again? That's right, follow our young master to see the old lady. As Lai Wang greeted her, the donkey cart arrived outside the tea house. Xiao Shunzi tied the donkey cart to a small tree next to the tea house, and Ziying jumped off the cart. The 3 of them walked into the tea house and sat down. Grandma Ma smiled and took out 3 clean large bowls from a large wooden basin filled with clean water with a bamboo strainer. She placed them on the table and looked at the 3 people, asking, do you all have a bowl of sour plum soup first? That's for sure. Grandma Ma's sour plum soup tastes good, but it doesn't taste like that elsewhere. Lai Wanhuan said happily. Hey, you're a monkey with a mouth. Grandma Ma's sour plum soup has a taste that only came out after several lifetimes, Grandma Ma said proudly. I believe it. Lai Wang and Grandma Ma, you have a conversation, and I have a conversation to tease Chu Air. There aren't many people in the tea house at the moment. Are you still drinking and letting it cool? Grandma Ma asked. Yes, if we drink cold, we are not afraid of it. Drinking cold can refresh us, Lai Wangying said. Grandmama filled 3 sea bowls with sour plum soup and handed them to the 3 people. Ziying took over a bowl and said, "Thank you, Grandmama." Ziying politely thanked her. Xiao, you don't need to thank me, Grandmama smiled and said. Ziying held the bowl and slowly drank it one by one. Lai Wang and Xiao Shunzi didn't care about being gentle or not. They picked up a big bowl and, with a thud 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 thud, half of the bowl went down in one breath. After taking a breath, the ocean bowl leaned closer to its mouth, making a sound of the big bowl. Grandmama looked at her helplessly and smiled, "No one is competing with you again. Take your time drinking." "I can't wait, I'm thirsty," Lai Wang said, turning his head to look at Ziying. "Young master, 1 bowl is not enough." Ziying looked up at Lai Wang's face and smiled, "Which time have you had enough of a bowl? If it's not enough, add more. Drink until you're full, okay?" Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I knew the young master was the best. "Grandmama, another bowl." Lai Wang smiled and said to Grandmama, "I want it too, I want it too." Xiao Shunzi quickly drank up his bowl and pushed the big bowl towards Grandmama. Grandmama smiled and said, okay, I'll add it to you, I'll add it to you." She lifted the lid of the small water tank over there that was filled with sour plum soup, took a water scoop, scooped 1 bowl at a time, filled it up, and brought the 2 bowls to the 2 of them. "Drink it. The water is delicious, but your stomach is your own. Drink this to digest. Don't go to the place before your breakfast is digested. If you're hungry, Grandmama doesn't care. Don't be afraid, let's drink enough now." Lai Wang Man said nonchalantly. Just now, a big bowl has been poured down with a thud, and the second bowl, Lai Wang and Zia Shunzi, are both resting, drinking, and playing. At this moment, a chaotic sound of footsteps could be heard from outside, as if many people had come. 3 people raised their heads and looked towards the door of the tea house, only to see 7 or 8 rough men with open chests and open arms walking in one by one from outside. After a few people came in, they sat at the table over there and shouted, "Ma Pazi, give a bowl of sour plum soup to each of my brothers." From the moment they entered, Grandmama's face was no longer as beautiful as when she saw Ziying and the 3 of her masters and servants. She could be said to be gloomy. "You have to pay for sour plum soup first." "Hey, what's wrong with you guys not having enough money?" said one of the dry-looking seniors. "If you have money, give it first. If you give money, the old lady will serve you sour plum soup. If you don't have money, there's a river over there, drink whatever you want, no money." These rough men, look at me, look at you. One of them reluctantly took out a handful of copper coins from his pocket, counted them, and impatiently shouted, here you go, each person has a bowl of sour plum soup." Grandmama doesn't get used to them. She knows these are a group of thugs. If it weren't for herself and the old man walking in the martial arts world when they were young, and having some skills, she would have been bullied by these thugs and cried. Can she still do this small business here safely? The man who counted the copper coins didn't give them sour plum soup because Grandmama didn't see the money. There was nothing he could do, but he couldn't beat it. The brothers were thirsty again, and after tossing around all night, he ate a few of his own dry cakes, thinking about eating those sweet fruits but didn't get them. Going to the city now, the road is still far away. If you don't take a sip of water first, you'll feel really thirsty. The man counting the money accelerated his pace and threw a large handful of copper coins clattering towards Grandmama's side. Counting, it's perfect for each person to have a bowl, he said when he was counting. Grandmama had already looked at her and directly pulled the copper plates on the table together, throwing them into the money box under the table. Turning back, he opened the cylinder head of the sour plum soup and scooped up water, one bowl at a time, serving 7 bowls in a row. He then pushed one bowl at a time towards the people across from him and said, take it for yourself. A few people had no temper in front of Grandmama, so they could only take bowl by bowl and run to sit on the long bench over there. Immediately after, the sound of this group of people pouring sour plum soup into their mouths was heard. Ziying looked up at these people, then lowered her head and slowly drank the sour plum soup from her bowl. Lai Wang and Ziying have already poured a big bowl, and this second bowl is just for drinking, playing, and tasting. The two of them looked at the people over there and lowered their heads, sipping their sour plum soup. These people took a few big sips in a row, satisfying their thirst. The rest of them couldn't bear to drink it all at once and sat there sipping. After tinkering all night, I'm really tired. It's perfect to sit here and rest my legs. The thug with a face full of flesh and a big beard said, "This whole night has been a damn evil. You know, it's just that manner. There's such a large orchard inside, and we don't even have a dog to watch it. Why can't we get in? I'm also wondering, did you think we hit a ghost? That's where Zhuangzi is. We've been going around, back and forth, why can't we find the main gate?" Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What can be said? We have already stepped on the path during the day. There are either old or young people, or women, and there are not many strong men guarding the house. If our brothers go in, they won't eat as many fruits as they want, and we can't take as much as we want. But why can't we go in? It's strange. It's just that wall, and it doesn't look high at all. You said our guys all rode their necks up the ladder, but they couldn't reach that wall. To be honest, I'm a bit liver twitching and my legs are a bit weak. If I go tonight, I won't go anymore. The fourth person shook his head in fear and said. Fourth, have you been cowardly? Have you forgotten? There are young and beautiful women in that village. You don't want to. Another dwarf winter melon smiled lewdly. If you're not cowardly, then why didn't you go in? Women, if you want women, you have to go to Zhuangzi first. Old Four said defiantly. I think so. The dwarf winter melon touched its chin and squinted its small eyes, saying, maybe it's dark at night. We might run into ghosts hitting the wall and walk aimlessly back and forth, but we just can't get there. How about we go early today while there's still some light? Let's climb over the wall first. Or, if the courtyard door is not easy to enter and the wall is not easy to climb, our buddies might as well climb up the mountain, climb up from the other side, and then down the mountain, and we'll enter the orchard, won't we? Isn't it all fruit trees on the hillside over there and in the garden below? How much do we want to eat? How much do you want to pick? That's right. How about we go hiking later today? The thug with a face full of flesh nodded and looked at his accomplices beside him. A few people sat there, drinking and discussing. Grandmama sat there holding a piece of hemp rope, threading the scattered copper plates one by one into a string, occasionally glancing sideways at the thugs. After listening to the conversation between those three people, Ziying's heart moved. The three of them looked at each other and understood the meaning in their eyes. Zhuangzi, Guoyuanzi, and Househan climbed over the mountain. If you want to say that there is a big village and a big fruit garden connected to the mountains, then only the old lady's place is there. Is it possible that these few boys are stealing fruits from the old lady's estate at night? But I don't know what happened, they didn't steal it. Listen to me, are you holding back and flipping over from behind the mountain tonight? A few people gave another glance. Grandmama was wearing a copper plate with hemp rope, and her eyes were also looking towards Ziying and the three of them. Lai Wang looked up and saw Grandmama give him a glance, then glanced at those few people again. Lai Wang nodded and understood that it was Grandmama reminding them. Ziying drank the sour plum soup from the bowl and put it down. Lai Wang and Ziying took a look and quickly took a few sips of the sour plum soup from the bowl. The three of them stood up, and Ziying arched his hand towards Grandmama. Grandmama, let's bid farewell first. Wishing you a prosperous business. Okay, young master take your time. Grandmama stood up and bid farewell. Lai Wang and Xiao Shunzi were walking outside, greeting Grandmama. Grandmama, let's go first. When we come back, we'll come to your place to drink sour plum soup. Okay, as long as the old lady is still alive, there will be your sour plum soup to drink. Grandmama waved her hand and smiled. Your elderly person will live a long life of 100 years, Lai Wang said with a smile. Grandmama also smiled when she heard it. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As Lai Wang spoke, he had already walked to the side of the donkey cart and put down the footstool. Ziying got on the donkey cart and sat down, while Lai Wang twisted his butt and jumped onto the front carriage shaft. Xiao Shunzi did the same and drove the donkey cart forward. Lai Wang twisted his head and said to Ziying in the carriage, Young master, did you hear what those thugs said just now? Ziying replied. The young master said, did they go to the old lady's estate to go to Huohua at night? It's probably not Wencheng. According to what they said, they still have to go tonight, said Lai Wang. Well, I think so too. Anyway, when we arrive later, we need to remind our aunties to be cautious. There are many men and women in the village, but there is not much strong labor to guard the house and courtyard. Tonight, we all have to wake up a bit, Ziying said with a slightly solemn expression. Got it, young master, don't worry. With Lai Wang here, you can rely on those few pieces of material and not get a cheap one. Lai Wang was full of confidence. Okay, then if those things really want to go to the old lady's estate, it's up to you, Ziying chuckled lightly. Just take a look, young master. It's wrapped around Lai Wang's body, Lai Wang said, patting his chest. The master and servant three spoke, and Xiao Shunzi also drove the donkey to speed up. The little donkey rested for a moment, and now it was full of energy. When it ran, its legs and feet were also light and agile. The strings of bells around its neck were ringing in a string, making it sound so cheerful. After walking nearly 10 miles, I could see the courtyard wall of the old lady's mansion from a distance. Young master, we are almost here and we can already see the walls of Zhuangzi's courtyard, Xiao Shunzi said with a small whip pointing ahead. Ziying reached out and lifted the car curtain, looking into the distance. We're almost there. From afar, a few people saw a carriage passing by on another road, heading straight towards Zhuangzi. Xiao Shunzi asked the little donkey to slow down and the three of them looked at the carriage ahead together. I saw that the carriage really stopped right in front of the gate of Zhuangzi. The carriage came to a steady stop, and the coachman ran over to put down the footstool. There were 4 people walking down from the carriage, one was an old man wearing a grey robe, one was a middle-aged man wearing an ochre robe, and 2 were young girls. One was wearing a snow-white dress, while the other was wearing a fiery red dress. Perhaps the sound of the carriage alarmed the people inside, and the door of Zhuangzi opened in response. The 4 of them walked directly in. The door of Zhuangzi closed again, and the coachman put down his pedals and jumped onto the carriage. He shouted, "Drive," and the carriage turned back along the same path. Ziying looked at these few people dressed in gorgeous clothes, but none of them were people she knew. She thought to herself, could it be that there were guests at Aunt Zhuang's estate today? Lai Wang was also puzzled and couldn't help but mutter to himself, we don't know these 4 people, we haven't seen them all. Is this? Maybe it's my grandfather's business friend. Alright, let's go too, Ziying urged. The donkey rang its bells as it ran, ringing incessantly all the way to the gate of Zhuangzi. As the donkey cart stopped, the gate of Zhuangzi opened with a clanging and creaking sound, and inside the door was the gatekeeper Lao Qiu. Oh my, I heard the sound of donkey's bells outside. It's true that the young master Biao has arrived, old Qiu said with a smile. Uncle Qiu has always been good. Ziying greeted him warmly. Okay, everything is fine. Is both Mr. and Mrs. Biao okay? Lao Qiu asked. Thank you very much for your concern, Uncle Qiu. Everything is fine with my parents, Ziying replied. That's good, that's good. Old Chiu nodded with a smile and looked at Lai Wang and Xiao Shunzi. You two monkeys have also come, and the fruits in the backyard will suffer. Look at what Uncle Chiu said, we're here to help pick fruits, okay? Lai Wang laughed and jumped off the donkey cart. As Lao Chiu spoke, he bent down and lowered the threshold. Xiao Shunzi pulled the donkey cart directly into the gate. Old Chiu unconsciously lowered his head, looked into the distance, stepped back into the gate, installed the threshold, and closed the gate. Xiao Shunzi and Lai Wang drove the donkey cart to the livestock shed in the courtyard, deftly unloaded the donkey cart, tied the little donkey to the slot, and removed the string of bells from the donkey's neck to hang on the pole in the slot. After listening to the ringing of bells all the way, it suddenly became quiet.